There is a question that follows Filipinos everywhere they go. Not the first question, the second one. The one that comes after someone has looked at you a little too long, tilted their head, and finally said it out loud. Where are you really from? In Tokyo, they assume you are Japanese. In Mexico City, they gesture like you are one of their own. In Honolulu, people speak to you in Hawaiian Creole before you have said a single word. In Los Angeles, you have been mistaken for Korean, for Samoan, for Guatemalan, sometimes all in the same week. No other people on Earth get mistaken for this many different ethnicities with such startling frequency. And for a long time, the best answer anyone could offer was culture or history, or just a vague nod toward the word mixed. But science has finally caught up, and what it found is not just mixing. What it found is something far older, far stranger, and far more extraordinary than anyone expected. Genetic researchers analyzing DNA from thousands of Filipinos across every region of the archipelago have now mapped one of the most layered ancestral profiles ever recorded for a single modern population. The results confirm what no simple story of colonization or migration could ever explain. Filipinos carry DNA from multiple ancient population waves, including genetic material from a human species that went extinct 50,000 years ago, and whose existence was not even known to science until 2010. This is not a history of mixing. This is a history of convergence, stretched across geological time, on a chain of islands sitting at the crossroads of the ancient world. To understand it, you have to start not with the Philippines as it exists today, but with Southeast Asia as it existed before recorded history, when sea levels were lower, coastlines looked nothing like they do now, and the islands that would one day become the Philippine archipelago were already home to human beings. The first people to arrive came from Africa. They were part of a migration wave that swept along the southern coastlines of Asia more than 50,000 years ago, moving through what is now India, skirting the edge of the subcontinent, and pushing into the deep tropical forests of Southeast Asia. These people, the ancestors of the groups now called Negritos, did not stop until the land ran out. They crossed the narrow straits between islands, carrying stone tools and an intimate knowledge of forest survival, and they became the original inhabitants of the Philippine Islands. Their descendants are still here, the Aita, the Agta, the Batak, and dozens of other indigenous communities scattered across Luzon, Palawan, and the Visayas are the living continuation of that first wave. They have dark skin, tightly coiled hair, and facial features shaped by tens of thousands of years of island life, and when geneticists began studying their DNA, they found something that stopped the scientific community cold. These groups carry some of the highest levels of Denisovan ancestry ever recorded in a living human population. Let that sit for a moment. The Denisovans were not Neanderthals. They were not Homo sapiens. They were a third branch of the human family tree, a species so elusive that we did not know they existed until a single finger bone was pulled from a cave in Siberia in 2010. Scientists sequenced its DNA. They found it did not match anything in the known human record. They called it Denisovan, after the cave where it was found, and they announced to the world that at least 2 ancient human species had been coexisting with our ancestors during their march across the globe. Then researchers started looking at modern populations. They found traces of Denisovan DNA in people across Asia and the Pacific, but the signal was not evenly distributed. A landmark study published in 2021 in the journal Current Biology, led by researcher Maximilian Lorena and a team from Uppsala University, analyzed DNA from over 100 populations across the Philippines. What they found was extraordinary. The Aita Magbukun of Luzon carry the highest confirmed proportion of Denisovan ancestry of any population on Earth, an estimated 5% of their genome tracing back to that vanished human species. 5% does not sound like much until you realize that most people outside of Asia and the Pacific carry none at all. And here is what makes it matter, beyond a number on a chart. Early research suggests Denisovan DNA contributed functional adaptations, genes influencing immune response, high altitude tolerance in some populations, and potentially elements of facial structure. The Denisovans were real people who lived in this part of the world, who encountered the first human beings to reach the Philippines, and who left a biological inheritance in their descendants that is still being carried today in the faces and immune systems of people living across the Philippine Islands. That is not a metaphor. That is genetics. Now layer the second wave onto this foundation, beginning roughly 4,000 to 5,000 years ago. A seafaring people originating from Taiwan and the southern coast of China began one of the greatest maritime expansions in human prehistory. These Austronesian-speaking people were extraordinary navigators. They built outrigger canoes capable of crossing open ocean. They carried domesticated plants, pigs, and chickens. They moved through island Southeast Asia with a momentum that changed the genetic composition of nearly every population they encountered. When they reached the Philippines, they did not displace the Negritos entirely. They intermixed. They settled alongside them on different parts of the same islands. Over generations, their populations grew larger, and their genetic signal became the dominant layer in most Filipino communities. If you have straight black hair, smooth skin, and almond-shaped eyes, you are, in large part, seeing Austronesian ancestry. It is the widest genetic thread running through the modern Filipino genome. But the weaving did not stop there. Roughly 2,000 years of sustained maritime contact with southern China brought waves of Chinese traders, merchants, and settlers who married into local communities and became part of the fabric of Philippine society long before Spanish ships ever appeared on the horizon. Today, estimates suggest that a significant proportion of Filipinos carry Chinese ancestry, reflected in surnames like Lim, Tan, Ko, and Sai that are now completely woven into Filipino culture. This East Asian layer contributes to the lighter skin tones, the epicanthic eye folds, and the straighter hair that appears across the population at varying frequencies. Then there is the southern connection. The Philippines sits at the northern edge of a vast oceanic world that stretches through Melanesia and into Polynesia. Ancient maritime contact between the southern Philippine islands, particularly Palawan, and the Sulu archipelago, and the islands of what is now Borneo in Indonesia created genetic overlap that persists to this day. Some Filipino communities, especially in Mindanao and the far southern islands, carry Melanesian ancestry. It shows in darker skin, broader noses, and curling hair that reads as distinctly different from either the Austronesian or Negrito components. And then came colonization. 333 years of Spanish rule introduced European DNA into the population at a level that is real but smaller than cultural mythology suggests. Genetic studies consistently show that European ancestry accounts for a relatively modest share of the average Filipino genome. It is present. It shaped certain physical characteristics in some families. Lighter skin tones, sharper nose bridges, wavy hair in some lineages, but it did not overwrite what came before. The colonial period added one more thread to a tapestry that was already ancient. The result of all of this, stacked across 50 millennia, is a population where two siblings raised in the same house by the same parents can look like they come from different continents, because in a sense they do. Each child inherits a different combination from the same ancestral pool. One draws more from the Austronesian layer. Another surfaces older Negrito or Denisovan markers. It is not contradiction. It is probability working across a genome with extraordinary depth. Geography sharpened this further. The Philippine archipelago has over 7,000 islands. For most of human history, many of those islands existed in relative isolation from one another. Different genetic profiles developed and stabilized in different regions. People from northern Luzon tend to show stronger East Asian signals, a reflection of geographic proximity to Taiwan and the Chinese mainland. Ilocanos and Ibanags in the north often have lighter complexions and features that read as distinctly East Asian to outside observers. Move south into the Visayas, and the picture shifts. Cebuanos and Juarez often show a more balanced blend of Austronesian and Negrito ancestry, producing what many consider the most recognizable Filipino appearance: medium skin tone, black hair, a face that carries both ancient and recent history in equal measure. Further south still, in Mindanao and among the indigenous Lumad peoples in groups like the Taboli, Melanesian and Negrito ancestry becomes more prominent. Darker skin, curlier hair, broader facial structure, not a deviation from Filipino identity, another expression of it. And Palawan and the Sulu archipelago carry their own signature entirely, one that links them genetically to populations across the Celebes Sea in ways that blur any tidy border between the Philippines and maritime Southeast Asia. The 2021 study also identified what geneticists call ghost population signals, evidence of ancestral groups that contributed DNA to living Filipinos but left no other trace, no recorded name, no excavated village, no surviving language, just a pattern in the genome that says someone was here, interbred with the people who became Filipino and then vanished. How many such groups existed and what they were like are questions that genetic science is only beginning to ask. This complexity has consequences beyond identity. Medical researchers have noted that Filipinos show distinct predispositions for conditions like type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease that differ meaningfully from those of other Asian populations. Treating Filipino patients as biologically equivalent to East Asians or South Asians produces gaps in care. The same ancestral distinctiveness that shapes Filipino appearance shapes Filipino physiology. The science is now making the case that Filipino-specific medical research is not just desirable, it is necessary. There is one more thing worth saying, and it concerns colorism. Philippine society has carried for centuries a complicated relationship with skin color, one rooted in colonial hierarchies that equated lightness with status and darkness with labor, but genetics does not recognize that hierarchy, morena. Skin reflects Negrito and Austronesian ancestry that reaches back across 50,000 years of human survival. Mestizo features reflect more recent layers. Neither is more Filipino than the other. Both are the direct product of deep history. The DNA does not assign value, it only records passage. Even Filipinos who have lived outside the Philippines for generations, in California, in the Gulf states, in London, in Sydney, still carry this distinct genetic signature. It does not fade with distance, it does not blur with time, because what built it was not a recent event. It was a 50,000-year accumulation that no amount of diaspora can unwrite. When geneticists compare the depth of Filipino ancestral mixing to populations like Latin Americans or mixed-race communities in other parts of the world, a key distinction emerges. Most other mixed populations became mixed within the last 500 years. The mixing that produced the Filipino genome began before the pyramids were built, before writing was invented, before any of the civilizations we study in school took their first breath. Filipinos are not the result of colonization. Colonization was just the last chapter of a story that started at the very beginning of the human journey out of Africa. So the next time someone looks at you and asks where you were really from, the honest answer spans the entire history of our species. You carry the first humans who crossed into island Southeast Asia. You carry the genetic echo of a vanished human species. You carry the Austronesian navigators who mastered the Pacific. You carry the traders, the settlers, the survivors, and the ancestors whose names we will never know, but whose presence lives on in you. You do not fail to fit a category. You exceed every category that exists. That is what 50,000 years of human history looks like when it walks into a room.